So welcome everyone, and still good morning at this point. We wanted to welcome you to our second session today entitled Cross-Disciplinary Practices of Teaching Business History. Before we started, I wanted to acknowledge our panel and introduce myself. I'm Vinny Quan. I'm the fashion business management teacher or professor that was gratefully, I guess, invited to partake in the NEH grant as a co-PI with Dr. Pyun and Dr. Bauman. And it's been a great ride. I just got to tell you that. It's been very, very fascinating. And where Dr. Pyun says she doesn't talk about sales and profit, I talk about sales and profit all day long. It's in every fabric of my clothing and gender, in my mind and everything else. So I'm really into it. But let's introduce everyone. And I'd like to introduce our first panelist, Suba. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, everyone. So I'm an assistant professor in the English and Communication Studies department. I liked in the previous panel that Suzanne talked about her scarf project was a pilot project. I'm new here, so my whole teaching experience has been like a pilot project at this point. I'm going to be talking about a few assignments from my Working Women in the U.S. course. This is a course that I inherited from the department, and when I inherited it, it was really taught as a very interesting course which focused on the ways that women, mostly white women in the U.S., joined professional work around the 1950s. And before that, the focus was sort of more on women, white working class women in iron mills and those kind of factory contexts. And really my interest was in thinking about how to have students take this course and actually be interested in it, because a lot of the readings were very, very dense. History and the literature was from, well, the late 1800s, early 1900s, so they had a really hard time with it. So when I was invited to be part of this project, I took this as an opportunity to sort of, adapt a lot of what was in the course to make it interesting to the students and also to me, because I'm going to be standing up there in front of like 27 students, trying to convince them that history is important and literature is important. And so there are a few assignments. I'll talk through them, and then maybe with the second question.
We'll start with the introduction.
I thought we were still, sorry.
No. Go ahead. We're going to go for the introductions.
Yeah? Oh, sorry. Well, my name is Zaida Godoy Navarro, and I'm in the Modern Languages and Cultures assistant professor, and I teach mostly Spanish. I also teach some content classes, more into theater and performance, more of Latin America, and then Spain. I'm from Spain, so I'm not that interested. And I'm going to stop there now so that we introduce each other. All right.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sally, and I'm a senior majoring in textile development and marketing. I completed my associate degree in fashion design.
Thank you, everyone. So now we're going to start officially with the questions. No worries. It was a preview. So the first question I would like to ask our panelists, this is a 3-year undertaking, so we invested a lot of time, effort, and energy, but the results you will see all day today. First question is, what type of curriculum, lesson plans, or projects did you develop or even undertake on the topics of labor history and business careers? So, Sue?
Yeah, I think this is a perfect time to then go into the actual assignments. The first one is one that students do once a semester. They do a presentation where they have to use a music video or a song, something from popular culture, to use as an interpretive tool for one of the readings that they're going to be presenting on in that particular week. I've given you some examples. Happy to talk through them if any of them stand out to you. But one of the interesting things about this particular assignment is the fact that the students start off approaching the assignment thinking, oh, this is an assignment with music and it's going to be easy. But what they end up not realizing is that they're actually going to have to interpret the reading that they're doing. And I can talk more about some of the readings. We talk a lot about what is work, what is perceived as real work, what is perceived as women's work, what is work that is undervalued and why. And so different kinds of paid and unpaid work really come up, and these songs and videos that they use are really good ways for them to sort of unpack those really difficult concepts. Can I have the next slide? The second assignment is really their midterm assignment, where I really enjoy having students think about their own process of learning, and then using that process of learning to think about how are other people around us also learning about the same things or not learning about the same things. So in this particular project, they create an informational display product around a specific event in working women's history. In this semester and the previous semester, we really focused on the 1911 shirtwaist factory fire because of the historical importance of it in our current moment. And then they take the product and they show it to somebody in the industry who's not connected to FIT in some way, and have a conversation about what did they know about this history, what do they not know about this history, or how have they learned about this history, allowing them to sort of reflect on their own learning process, but also people around them. And then the third assignment this is a really new one, and thanks to this particular seminar, I think it's been really helpful for me to develop. I think Dan, Rebecca, and Suzanne helped me develop this in particular. I take them to a current exhibit at the Historical Society Museum, which uses objects to tell women's working history. And so then when they go to this exhibit, they notice what objects are used to tell women's working history, and they try and come up with an object that is not included in the collection. And oftentimes, I'll have students use objects within their own families. So their grandmothers may have been working in New York City, so a sewing machine is often an object that is really important to them. I've also had a student working with a straightening iron. So thinking about the legacy of Madam C.J. Walker and the history of like black wealth in the US. So using the hot comb as an object as well. This is also a specific assignment that I was able to develop with the library. So using a lot of the magazines that are there in the library has been a really wonderful resource at FIT to create this particular assignment.
Okay. Let me see if I do this right. Okay, so I teach mostly Spanish 1, Spanish 2, so it's they both are beginner courses. Don't let the two mislead you. So when Rebecca asked me to think of a way to maybe be part of this, well, I mean, the challenge was, right, that it's a very basic level. It's not like I cannot have my students read a history text in Spanish, right? But if you're taking Spanish, it's because you are career-centered, right? You're thinking of your career. So I just think that wouldn't be an issue to bring to class. Now, what I ended up doing wasn't exactly on that route. So let me tell you. So actually, I can tell you of a couple of very short activities, again, because this is a beginner class, so I cannot make a big project out of this. But for my Spanish 2, there's this chapter where we learn about cleaning. No idea why it's so important to know that much vocabulary about cleaning. Yeah, so let's leave it there. So it kind of bothers me a little bit, like why are they learning so much vocabulary about cleaning? And then a way to approach it was I thought of these plays, sorry, I work with plays all the time, these movies, Made in Manhattan, I'm trying to think of the title in Spanish was something totally different. And then the Spanglish, These movies are from the 2002, 2004, so the students might not even know them. So I give them, if they click, this is part of a discussion. It's actually been using in my online course. So when they click, they can see the short trailer. And basically, I have a few questions for them. It's just to make them realize that both movies, the protagonists are they come originally from a Spanish-speaking country, and when they get to the U.S., they work as maids, either in a hotel or in someone's house. So I just I put these questions actually in Spanish. Yeah, I don't expect them to answer in Spanish. I'm happy if they do Spanglish. But I don't say anything, so I just leave it there open, and then if they reach out and they ask me, what is it, do you want Spanish or English? I'm like, just have fun with it. But most of them would try their best to use Spanish if you don't say anything, so I just leave it like that. And then I guess what's important for me is really the questions, and the discussion that goes between them, especially like for the last two questions, I guess, they realize quickly that this is a stereotype. And then when you ask them, well, do you think you see this in today's TV shows or movies? If the first person who's participating in the discussion says, no, things are a lot better, the other student just go for that student, And then I think I added the other question about like what other movies, what other TV shows, and then they bring me to what's going on right now. No, there's been some movies I think they'll talk about Family Guy. So, like, they are very familiar with, how this is still an issue. So yeah, that's one way for me to approach it. To think of you're studying a language. You're very interested in that language. It sounds, attractive to you. But then look what we see, in the media when about this language. Of course, if I had them in class, I will have a post-discussion a little bit more about it, how all these students who come with the idea that, I want to be bilingual, When you say you want to be bilingual, you mean what exactly, see? Do you think you're going to have the same value in the two languages? Or what's going to be your value in the other language? But, of course, this only happens, if I get to have them in person. And then there's a second one that I didn't put there, just because it doesn't have images so much. It's actually Spanish 1. The last chapter, they learn all these professions, right? So that vocabulary makes a lot of sense. And then what I bring is we've been talking about professions for a whole chapter, so they know the vocabulary. I already asked them, what do you want to start? What do you want to do? Or do you already have a job? This is Spanish 1. They don't have a lot of vocabulary. And then what I bring them is a reading, just that gives us a lot of numbers about what the kind of jobs that Latinos, Latinx do in the U.S. these days. So they have, a few questions, just see, because the text is actually in Spanish and it's a little bit difficult to understand. So we do that in class. And then after we do the reading comprehension, I have them in groups and I give them discussion questions that a little bit, that they need to do in groups because they're a little bit hard. And then I help them individually. And it's kind of the same things that I'm interested in, like approaching the text that we just read a little bit critically, like when they give these numbers, do you think they mean the same number of men and women? Or what are some of the jobs that they don't mention at all? Or, just trying to, do you think it's an advantage or a disadvantage? Like trying to dig a little bit more into what they just read and trying to be, critical with what you read. That's for me is very important. Yeah, that's what I do.
Before we start.
Oh.
So, the first question had sort of several different verbs in there, but, part of the question was what projects did you undertake on behalf of, learning and applying labor history? So we'd like to acknowledge Professor Sue Koo, fashion design chair, who developed a lesson plan and a project on the triangle shirtwaist incident, unfortunately. But we have Sally here, who was the one of her students in the class and undertook the endeavor.
Okay, thank you. So during my 4th semester as a fashion design student, me and 2 other group mates, Asalia, Samiva, and Glenn Rowe, decided to enter the Met competition. We did this outside of class, and it was basically, the guideline was to create a design that informs one of the 12 overarching themes from the In America, a Lexicon of Fashion exhibition. And we chose the word conscious, and our advisor, Professor Koo, gave us a quick lessons about the tragedy of the 1911 Triangle Shirtwaist factory fire, and it really touched all of our hearts because we just couldn't believe that, young immigrant workers, younger than us, were involved in sewing clothes in such unsafe conditions. And during the event where the fire broke out, none of them could escape because their supervisors have closed down the door, and also the fire rescue couldn't even rescue any of them because the fire hose weren't tall enough to reach up to like the 10th floor. And the saddest part is that a lot of them, they didn't really have an option. All of them, unfortunately, were gonna die. So a lot of them actually jump out of the window. And we very much resonate with this incident because, well, we are also the future of the fashion industry. And just like these workers, we sew and we make garments. And we want to partake in the benefit of the legacy that these workers had to create a change for labor throughout America. And just like these workers, we're also children of immigrants from all over the place. All of these, somebody as young as 14-year-old passed away, even though it wasn't even their fault, and they just hoped to make more money in America and mail it back to their family and take care of it. So next slide. So when we enter the competition, the first round is to just submit like our design, our sketch. So the sketch and the design is made by Asalia, and then our other group mate, Glenn, did the tech pack for it, and me and Professor worked on the one-page statement on how we can convey the message, the importance of the Triangle Shirtwaist incident. So the purpose of our garment is to raise consciousness of the impact of the fashion industry had on American labor history. And we also want to create a very voluminous and special occasion looking garment as like a wearable monument to honor and commemorate the individual who changed the American industry. It's very sad to say this, but if the fire incident did not happen, I don't think workers, like American workers, would have fair labor laws. Lastly, our garment, we want to honor Frances Perkin, who's like the first lady secretary for the Roosevelt cabinet. She actually witnessed these workers jumping out of their window, and she turned, tragedy into triumphant by really fighting for workers, establishing Fair Labor Act, where all the labor workers in America get a minimum wage and maximum hours for the week. So next slide. Thank you. So when we found out that we were one of the 10 finalists for the competition, we were very thrilled that we can make the garment we can sew it up and make it into reality, and everybody would be able to see it. So the bubble patchwork that you see, each of the bubble contains the worker's name and their age who passed away. There are approximately 146 bubbles for front and back. 123 are women and 23 of them are men. And we also, to honor Frances Perkin, we decided to print her name on like the heart of the ruffle part to show that there's hope in the industry, that any tragedy that you can experience, you can advocate and you can make a change for not only the fashion industry, but the American labor force in general. And then for the bottom of our dress, that is there's some sustainability in this outfit in this garment, because the crinoline is actually from Professor Koo. She gave it to us that we upcycled, along with the button-down shirts. She also donated to us. We're very thankful for that. And the button-down shirts actually represent the labor force of America. We want to also honor them for their hard work as well.
Thank you very much for all of your insights into your development and undertaking of your several projects. So the second question I'd like to ask each panelist individually would be, what were some of the challenges that you faced in either A, developing your curriculum and lesson plans, or B, undertaking the garment project in particular?
So many challenges. I think one of the hardest things about teaching labor history in a class like mine, where I had students primarily from the cosmetic and fragrance marketing program, they were very invested in learning about women's history. But I think one of the biggest challenges is the way that the history is told is often very, very exclusionary. It's often very linear and simplistic in the way that these histories are told. So trying to find ways to have them experience this history in a way that's both interesting to them, but also interesting to me as a researcher of labor history myself. Trying to bring in things that are contemporary, allowed the students to really think about, even when we're talking about very conceptual things or historical things, they're able to relate it back to their own experiences of being working women or identifying as working women themselves. I think was a big challenge for me, which is why the music one was really helpful in that, because it helped them sort of reflect back on how labor history in particular, can be so reflexive if we study it in an interesting way. Some other challenges are just making sure that they have the support they need when they're doing more multimodal work in the classroom. So with both of the other assignments, allowing them time to learn how to do research, how to sort of build in really ethical practices of research was not really a challenge, but an uphill experience for us in the classroom. I don't know if you want to add to that. Yeah.
I guess I already talked a little bit about the challenges. Like I said, because it's Spanish 1 and Spanish 2, it's just hard. We are so focused on trying to get them to learn as much, of the language as they can. But then the cultural component it's important for me as well. So, I'm not very good at looking at things as challenges. You can always darle la vuelta a la tortilla, we say in Spanish. You just can always turn it around. So for example, with my Spanish 1 class, I give them it's a little bit, it's a text that is difficult because it comes from from a newspaper. It doesn't come from the textbook, that it's already a little bit made for them. But I have them work in groups, I give them some extra vocabulary, and then it's more about making them realize how good they are, because that's towards the end of the semester, and how much they have learned. Same thing then, for the discussion part, they feel unsure, they're discussing obviously mostly in English, and then they want to write their questions, which I never asked them to do, but okay, if you want to do it, let's do it. Let's make it simple, and let's make you, let's see how you can answer those difficult questions. So I don't know, it's just, I actually, it's a challenge, but I liked it because it's more of a real, right? It's more real, and then it helps me make it more interesting for them. And then the other challenge, of course, is for my Spanish too, is that I've been doing this mostly online. So like I said, when you have a discussion, and even though they have to write to each other, but I don't have that moment of, post-discussion, no? So now, I can send them an email, right? Or I can write something, but they're probably not going to read it, and you don't want to be having them read more things. So, for example, some of the another comment or disagreement that they tend to have, it's like some students will say, because I asked them, what do the two movies have in common? And then they say, they didn't speak Spanish, and that's why they have to work as maids, no? But it's not true, because J-Lo in the hotel, J-Lo didn't know how to speak Spanish and not English. Did I say it the wrong way? So they say, no, she speaks English. No, so there's this disagreement, and there's this stereotype that because you come from a Spanish-speaking country, you don't know English. No, your English is not good enough, and that wasn't the issue in the movie at all. No, so it's just like they normally there's a student who will go and be like, no, but. I saw the movie, and actually that's not. But I don't have that moment, to kind of put it together and be like, oh, these were the disagreements. So I think that's still the challenge, no? And I just think it's also part of how our courses, many of our courses, we have to teach them online, and how can you figure out a way to kind of still deal with that. I guess now that I know what the answers tend to be, I'm prepared to add one more question, knowing that they will be saying this or that, to kind of have them reflect a little bit more on that.
So I guess some challenges we faced when we were making the garment was probably time, just because we had to. We were in the fourth semester, which we also had to do a capstone on top of this garment. So, we took time, even in our weekend, came to school, work on it at night as well during the weekdays. But I think the most challenging part was dividing up enough bubbles that we can place every worker's name on the shirting, figuring out how to do all the math in an A-line skirt for front and back. But eventually we figured it out, and very thankfully we worked together extremely well, and everything just went. The sewing part was also very difficult. I think it's more difficult for my other group mates, since Asalia had to figure out how to do the top ruffle and also how to sew on the button-down shirts, tack it to the crinoline to make sure it stays, because the crinoline was very heavy along with the A-line skirt. But yeah, we worked extremely well as a team, and I'm very grateful to be part of that.
Thank you very much. So the final question, and we're going to break for lunch in a brief while. I know everyone's getting a little hungry. Would be, the investment that was made in creating the curriculum and/or undertaking the projects and lesson plans that were done. What impact, has it had on the stakeholders? And the stakeholders are numerous, of course, depending upon your point of view.
I love the business language of this question. I think one of the things that I've noticed my students do when we're in this classroom is really question the course itself, which I think is a triumph for me as an instructor and professor. The name of the course is Working Women in the U.S., and it begins in 1865. And every semester, I'll ask them why the course begins in 1865 and what is the significance of why we talk about work or labor history starting in 1865. And that really shifts their understanding of work in an American context at all, because working, being successful is so ingrained into the way that we speak, into the way that we teach. We're constantly telling our students about how things will bring them success and professional success and things like that. And I think I really noticed the ways that students have taken assignments in this course and readings in this course to challenge those narratives themselves about the narratives of work, the origins of work, and also thinking about the sort of ways in which enslavement is taught in these histories. And then also for them to, at the end of the semester, try and imagine, at least in some way, a world where they're thinking about their relation to each other and to me outside of the realm of work and success. I think that impact that this class has is something that I'm really proud of in the students. And then for me in particular, projects like this, seminars like this, and classes like this really challenge me to think in more interesting ways about my own pedagogical work and my own pedagogical style. So I'm an English and literature and history person. So I guess in an easier world, I would just have them write academic papers. But we're not in that world, and we're not in that kind of institution. So the challenges that I take on myself, it makes me a better teacher, because it helps me take these really convoluted, difficult concepts, and instead of avoiding them or steering away from difficult discussions and conversations, I'm sort of compelled to find interesting ways to approach these really difficult but valuable conversations.
I don't know. I feel like maybe I already talked about it a little bit. These kind of activities, again, this kind of more than activity, more being part of a project like this, no, it kind of takes you away from, these are classes that we are teaching many sections, so we kind of have to, we all have to have the same exam, we all have to, so there's so much, we don't have a lot of room to do different things, we don't have a lot of room to, kind of be away from the material, from the book, from the ebook. You kind of give yourself the permission to do that, because you are part of a bigger project, right? So it's that little bit, of extra work, but then the satisfaction that you are doing something that actually students respond. You can see like they start having discussions that normally they wouldn't have otherwise in class, no? So for me, that's an impact, that the students are something that they're gaining out of my class and maybe not in the other sections, even though we share materials. And then, I was thinking how, I guess like language teachers, we always kind of playing with the same thing. It's always a little bit like this, like we normally we have many sections, and then sometimes you want to do something a little bit different, or that particular topic, the book that we have in a department doesn't work very well, so you look online for lesson plans. So I just love the idea that this will be available, I just love the idea that FIT, I feel, is like, it's for students who already are into a career path, they're very, career focused, and I feel like our lesson plans can be very real in that sense. So I think they would be attractive. And then in terms of investment, I guess, even for myself, like I think I've been using these lesson plans for a few semesters now, and how you always think about, I'm going to update it, I'm going to change the movies, for example, no? And sometimes you're like, no, I changed already all these things, I'm not going to change this one thing that is working, no? But it's not just that, it's just like I feel like I like giving them the space to give me what's new, like if I already give them what's new, then I don't have that space. And then I guess the last thing that this has done for me is that then it becomes a little bit of an obsession, and I use this same topic in another class that I didn't want to tell you about, not to tell you too much, but then I was able to do like a whole unit. So it was all about jobs, so I have a lot more room. I didn't have a book, so this was for my heritage students, which means that they grew up hearing the language at home, but they don't feel comfortable speaking it. So there, I was able to make it more relevant to them, more particular to them. I gave them a text that was a little bit harder, and that I talked more about the difference. How it was a text about very recent study about how women in New Jersey during I think it was actually during the pandemic. And mostly like Latino women, how the pandemic impacted their jobs. Many lost their jobs, their salary, etc. So for me, this started like being like one little activity, and then I did another little activity, and then I did a whole unit in another course. So it's been doing a lot. It's been giving me a lot of work.
Great return on your investment. ROI.
I think our garment opened up a lot of conversation with my peers. I met new people through the Met College Night where we talked about, what impact it has on us, on the future. But I think it also opened up a broader question of, it, not really a question, but it doesn't, I guess the question would be, did we really achieve fair labor? Maybe in the US we did, but then it also happened in other countries as well, where we don't see how the garments are made. And I think having this garment also open up the conversation about who makes our garments and how are we appreciating them, because I don't think this fire incident is the last one that's ever gonna happen in a factory. Like in Bangladesh, that really big one is where like every company fast fashion is like woke, but there's also still a problem to be solved, I would say. And I think it's so important to open up these conversations with my peers, but also being a textile development and marketing student, we talk about sustainability a lot. And I don't think sustainability is just about the environment, but the people as well, knowing the farmers who are involved of growing the fibers to the workers who are sewing your clothes. And I think those are extremely important conversations to have. And how can we move forward? And I think the fashion industry, the model that we have currently, is not very sustainable for people to create things that benefits the planet as well as the people and the business. And I guess we would have to find new solutions. And how can we collaborate to ensure that we don't repeat this incident again?
Thank you very much for explaining your impact on the stakeholders. Now we'd like to open it up for any questions. I guess I'll get you the mic so we can hear.
I'm just curious what's going to happen with the dress. Does one of you own it, or is it part of a collection, or so I'm just what's the future? Yeah.
For some time with now it's at the library exhibition. Thank you. It's at the library exhibition currently, but for a while it was with one of our group mate, Glenn, and then Asalia had to take over, and she had to actually make a customized garment bag to take it home out of like shower curtains, and she was sewing it in his house and everything. So I don't know. I don't know where our garment's gonna be after this, but yeah. Oh, that would be incredible. Yeah. Oh my God.
Thank you.
So I teach a history of New York City class and U.S. history post-Reconstruction at Stony Brook University, which is in Suffolk County. It might as well be Boise, Idaho. And so it seems to me that you have one tool at your disposal that I didn't hear you mention, but I'm curious how do you utilize it, which is urban space and the fact of actually being in Manhattan. The Ash building where the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire took place is 20 some odd blocks away. The Historical Society, obviously not far. I'm curious about using urban space itself as a tool for teaching history, and if you encountered any ways to do that in this project.
Thank you. I can talk about it in the context of the literacy public knowledge assignment, because I think that's where it's most useful. In general, I guess, before I jump into it more specifically, in general, the students always go through this experience of just being like, wow, I can identify this building we're reading in this reading in New York City. That whole experience, especially when I have students who are international or they come from out of state, all of those. And then I have also other students whose grandparents, family have always been involved in the garment industry and fashion industry in other ways too. So having them interact with each other about their experience of living in the city is always a really good generative space. But for my specific assignment, the one about literacy and public knowledge, the sort of, once they've created the product, they have to go show it to someone who is in the industry, and oftentimes they'll choose fabric shop owners who are in the neighborhood. So then when they're writing their project reflection statement, they have to really talk about where did they go, how did they find the people, what conditions do they work in these fabric shops or different kinds of garment shops. They'll even sometimes talk to retail workers and what conditions they work in. When I think of how they navigate New York City, I guess they're not just navigating this space, but also the ways that people are living and inhabiting those spaces. And it helps them, again, I think, do the thing that I'm really trying to get them to think about is how the readings that they're doing are really applicable to the lives that they're leading. And what ends up happening then is they can't stop talking about how their experiences of work come into our classroom. It's such an exciting thing that when I ask them questions, they'll bring in incidents that they've noticed, that they've experienced, and notice the ways that they have the language now to talk about those things. So I guess that's how I think of how they navigate urban space, is by navigating the space and the people that live within it, and then seeing themselves in that space as well. Does that? Yeah.
Okay, any additional questions?
Hi, I'm Rebecca Hoffman. I'm actually in the counseling department. I don't have so much a question as a big thank you. I think I'm here by virtue of the labor organizing that my grandmother did as a Macy's fine dresses saleswoman, and she got her job. She went to get a job. She tried to get a job at Macy's. She was living on Long Island. She got off the train, and she presented herself as somebody looking for a job, and they declined her. So then she went to the makeup counter, and she had them make her up. Then she circled back, and she got the job. I think she was 14. And my great-grandfather was also a silk worker and started a union in New Jersey and Camden. So I'm really here by virtue of their great work, and you're telling our story, and I know that story continues, and you've each told us so beautifully how you're communicating that to the students, so thank you.
Anyone else? So, I guess not. We'll take a break. We have time until 1 p.m., so I want to thank the panel and thank the audience.